Well, hello there and welcome to the Common Farm Flowers channel. It is Valentine's Day and I am inspired by many posts across social media to have a little chat about what it's like to be a flower farmer and how one can make a living at it. And I thought in order to make it interesting, I would talk about myself. My friends and family would say, "Really?" and raise their eyes at me. But no two small businesses are the same. And what drives people to run small businesses is always different. And bearing those two facts in mind, and flower farming and floristry are just more small businesses. Sometimes they're quite big businesses, but in my case, micro business. And I thought I'd talk about what it's like to be a flower farmer, why I choose to be a flower farmer. When I teach workshops, and I do teach a lot of workshops, do look at my workshop listings and pick something for yourself. One of the workshops I teach is how to do well on social media as a small business. And my two main points that I teach, I teach a lot of interesting facts, but amongst the many things I teach on the social media workshops are that one, you're not going to be if you want to be an enormous influencer on Instagram, that's a whole nother job. It doesn't matter how many followers you have. It's not about numbers, it's about engagement, one. Two, the way to engage, one of the ways to engage, I give you lots, is to remember to tell people who you are, what you do, why you do it, where you do it, and how people can buy from you. And in the spirit of learning from myself, I'm going to do that today in this post. And I hope it'll inspire, if not anybody to come on I hope it inspires people to come on my workshops. But it also, I hope it helps people think about how small businesses are inspired, how they're created, and possibly remember that what drives two people is never the same. It's always different. And so we should possibly respect other people, but also acknowledge that sometimes people do things which are really interesting and for interesting reasons. So enjoy. If you're new to the channel, please subscribe. Do press the bell icon and we'll tell you when we've got more clips coming up. If any of the tips and tricks I give you along the way are helpful, you can always buy me a coffee. The link to coffee buying is in the blurb to all my clips. And best of all, you can now join my club, which is a growing community of people talking to each other and learning all sorts of extra bits and pieces. It's great fun. So hopefully I'll see you there. Hello. Now, anybody who has done my Flower Farmers Year workshop will know that the 15th of February is a really big day for me. And I know this is the 14th of February, but historically, I used to do Valentine's Day. So I would normally, over the years, be here and I'd have two people helping me, and there'd be a pile of orders at one end and all the boxes made up ready in advance. And we'd have all the flowers down this end of the room, and they'd all have been split into buckets so that we knew what was going in each bouquet. And we would be working against the clock. Actually, we wouldn't be. We'd have done it yesterday. We'd done most of it yesterday, and I'd have been finishing off for my local clients today. And we'd have been using tulips, ranunculus, narcissi, daffs, lovely British grown spring flowers. Because one of the things about my business is that I chose right from the beginning that we would only specialise in using British grown flowers. I don't use flowers that are imported from abroad. And at this time of year, there's a great deal of chat about whether one should stick to one's guns on such a subject, or perhaps give a little. And I've always chosen to stick to my guns because for me, it makes it in some ways, easier. I draw a line around what I do and don't do, and I work within the line. And in some ways, what it does is for a lifestyle business like mine, the more I have to make decisions, the more the decision-making process slows me down. So it suits me. However, I did see on somebody else's social media post, a person had written that they used to be specifically British flowers, but they'd given up because they couldn't make it work for them. You know, fair enough. But what little red rag to a bull moment here, I am a tourist. She said that she thought people only specifically using British grown flowers or locally grown flowers was a privilege. Put them in a privileged position. It was a privilege from which she found she couldn't make her business work like that. And while I will agree, I'm extremely privileged in many, many ways, I would argue that it's really important when running a small business that the business should make you the living that you need it to make. So I'm always asking, when people come on my lifestyle business workshops, my first question and my last question is, what is your enough? How much is enough? What do you need to live on? Because a lifestyle business is about how much you can live on, not about being paid what somebody else considers your job worth. It's about you taking charge and controlling your income by making sure that you can scale whatever it is you do or make up enough, sell enough of them at a price which will give you enough profit to put enough in your pocket. So that's my lifestyle business workshop. And I slightly resent being called privileged for running my business on my terms. And I guess one of the reasons I run Common Farm Flowers, one of the reasons I'm a flower farmer because I like to work on my own, because I really like working on my own. I love people, but I like to work on my own. But I also really like the challenge of making a living out of something that other people slightly look down their noses at. And so I'm of an age that I have some, colleagues and friends and people I've known for many, many years who've all made really large sums of money, done very, very well for themselves. And they live in smart parts of London, and drive big cars and all of that stuff. And they too, when I started Common Farm Flowers, sometimes people said, oh, it's a lifestyle business, with a special sort of patronising smile. And for me, again, red rag to bull stuff. Yes, it is a lifestyle business. But in order to run a successful lifestyle business, you have to keep very much on top of what it is you're trying to do, why you're doing it, and how you're going to constantly make it work for you. And no, I don't do Valentine's Day anymore. I leave that to the many, many, many and very, very good retail florists. And the reason I don't, and I am a retail florist, I've got lots of local customers, but most of them are probably past the Valentine's Day bouquet level. And so I'm choosing not to do it, even though there are plenty of very lovely British grown flowers available to do them with. And the reason I'm choosing not to do it is because I have very carefully made a cash flow forecast, and I have very carefully looked at my flower farmer's year, and I have very carefully priced my products so that I can make enough without doing Valentine's Day, without the stress of it. I am becoming much more of a wholesale florist, a flower grower. And it is true that there is a sort of different headspace between growing bouquets, as I always traditionally did, and which I will always do to an extent, partly because I teach so much, lots of workshops here on the farm, so I need to have good quality stock for my students to work with. Partly because I love making bouquets, and I will always do it. I have, good local customers, a nice solid local customer base for whom I will grow what I'm about to sow in these trays. But really, at the end of the day, my flower growing business will end up being much more wholesale. And so I'm focused on that. You don't have to be all things to all people. You are allowed to examine your business and make it work for you. So I slightly resent whoever it was who said that people who only use British flowers for Valentine's Day were in any way privileged, because there are plenty to be used, and that they couldn't afford to only use British because they would lose their customers. I appreciate customers might well need a bit of educating, but I also resent being called privileged because I have thought very hard about my business, and I have made a business, I hope, which will pay a modest living for a family of 6 to live in this falling down house on these constantly struggling to go wild acres. So I think one of the reasons I'm a flower farmer, just to get back to the point, is I like the challenge of making a success of something that other people might consider difficult. And it is difficult. I work hard, I work long hours, but I really like it. I was gardening all weekend, but aren't I lucky that I can call that work? But I'm not just piddling around, having a nice time. I'm also strategizing all the time to make sure that I can do the bits I really enjoy and make enough money to pay for everything. Okay? So that's one of my second reasons why I am a flower farmer. I'm a flower farmer because I like to prove that it's possible to make a modest, comfortable living doing something you really want to do within the boundaries that you have set yourself. That's number 2. Okay, I'm going to get on with this. I don't think you need to watch me sowing 20 trays of seeds. And if you've done the Flower Farmers Year Workshop, you'll know why there are 20. See you in a minute. There's another reason I like to be a flower farmer, and it's because I like to work on my own. Not all flower farmers work on their own. I know there are lots out there who are teams of lots of people, but I have made myself a business where basically I can work on my own. Fabrizio works here full time as well, but he also likes to work on his own. So the two of us can get on with our various jobs quite far away from each other and come back together at the end of the day pleased with what we've achieved. This means we can't, there's a limit to how much we can do as a business. If you don't have help, we do have some help, but if we don't have much in the way of help, then you have to work out really carefully who you are in your job and what you do. And I really like that discipline of having to think all the time, what's my job? What am I best at? And that is a fun thing about working for yourself. I love it. I also quite like making videos, even though I have to put the camera up miles away. Anyway, on we go. And I appreciate I'm lucky because I get to take lots of fresh air and exercise as part of my job. And for that, I'm grateful every single day of the week. Even when the weather's awful. When the weather's awful, I resent it, the weather. But yes, I am lucky. One of the reasons I do my job is because I get to take fresh air and exercise in any quantity. So yes, I'm always telling my students at my lifestyle business workshops to work out what their job is in their business. My job is to do the fiddly stuff. I do some of the weeding, but my neighbour Sue, who is a full-on no mucking about treasure, and has been gardening for her livelihood since she was a teenager, and so knows a great deal about what she's up to. She does 10 hours weeding a week, but not all the time, quite often. I do the propagating, the kind of layout, the design, but I do my own. I have to do a bit of weeding. So here I am weeding round my little silver scilla, which are just coming up and which will flower in April. They're called Star of Bethlehem, and they're a lovely crop. They're quite short stemmed, but if you do weddings in the spring, they're very, very useful in posies, and they're very happy in our wet clay. So they go on. So my job in this business is to do the small jobs, the fiddly stuff, the propagating. I curate the patch. I decide what goes where. I decide what will grow. But it's important that I do a bit of weeding, because otherwise I might not notice the seasons so much. It's quite easy, weirdly enough, for a flower farmer to not spend a huge amount of time flower farming. If you have lots of help, you can end up sitting behind a computer all the time, which for me is not the point of the exercise. I like it. Look at this glorious weather. So I'm one of the gardeners. I do the PR and marketing. That's why I'm here. And but I don't do the everyday accounting, partly because Mrs. Wilson told me I was rubbish at maths when I was 11, and who was I to argue with Mrs. Wilson? And partly because I'm better at PR and marketing than I am at maths. So I'm going to let my friend and longtime colleague Karen Wolf, who has a little firm called Organise My Books, and she is a very, very good freelance bookkeeper. So she keeps me on the straight and narrow financially. And my colleague Nicola, if ever you do one of my workshops, you'll be emailed. Your relationship with Nicola will exist, because she's the one who sorts out the Zoom calls and the links, and she also does quite a lot of the admin for the website. You can tell when it's me on the Instagram, because I just go, oh look, it's a lovely day. And then there's Nicola afterwards going, yes, and to learn more about our lovely days, please join this workshop, that workshop or the other, and here's the link to join. So she's very organised like that. So if you did one of my lifestyle business workshops, one of the things I would make you think about, tea cake, is what is your job going to be in your business? Because if you cannot be all things to all people, in the same way that you can't be all the different kinds of flower farmer, because you'll go mad and you won't make any money. But you can't be all the jobs in your business either. I suggest your business needs to be able to pay some other people for some support. but you have to choose what that's going to be. Anyway, so back to my original thing, who, what, where, why, how, that I always teach my students at my social media workshops to think about. Who am I? Well, my name is Georgie Newby. I'm 55 years old. I was born in 1967, and my background, such as it is, I started off working in Paris in my 20s, my first sort of real job. I worked for an extraordinary woman called Susan Train, who was the Paris bureau chief of American Vogue. And she worked for American Vogue for 50 thrilling years. And it was a gift coming across her. You know, if one is lucky, at some point one comes across people, kind of mentors that adults that as a young person one can adopt as somebody who will give kind advice, somebody one trusts. And it's sort of like a godparenty character. So Miss Train was my godparenty character that I chose. And she taught me attention to detail. She taught me to make lists. And she kind of made me think I could do anything if I paid attention and concentrated and spent some time working out how to achieve my objectives. She taught me that objectives are important, and I think a lot of people kind of swan through life without identifying their objectives enough. So then I wrote novels. Once I stopped working for Miss Train, I wrote novels, but I could never make enough money writing novels. And secretly, that is my dream. You may think I'm living the dream now, but I'm not. I really want to be a novelist, but I can't afford, I daren't afford. I can't see that I would make enough money. So that's why I'm not a novelist, I'm a flower farmer. So, but one day I might be brave enough to give it a go. I have written novels in the past, but I was younger and could live on other people's expense accounts and broccoli. So I didn't really need to make any money. But as I've got kids and Granny lives with us, I have responsibilities, which I daren't risk having enough money by writing novels. And I admire people enormously who risk the time. It takes about a year and a half, 2 years, if not more, to write a novel. So you need that income. How are you going to eat in the meantime? So anyway, that's my dream. Slowly. In my dream life is to write novels in the morning and garden for fun in the afternoon. I'm not quite there yet. So that's who I am. I am not a trained horticulturalist, nor am I a trained florist. I'm a good gardener and a good florist, but possibly amongst good gardeners and good florists, I'm a very good communicator, which is why I teach so many workshops. Because in that spirit of do what you're good at, I'm good at telling people how to do stuff. I'm good at breaking down processes into manageable chunks. I'm good at making it possible for people to understand what they could do in order to make a success of their ideas, which is why it's why kind of slight red rag to a bull moment when somebody said that being a flower farmer was a privilege. I was like, hang on a second. No, it requires a great deal of hard work and intelligence, actually. And I feel like this person needs to come on one of my workshops and I'd help her see how she could still be a flower farmer if she wanted to and wouldn't necessarily have to give in and change her business model unless she really wanted to. And I do get that. It is much, much easier to buy in stock rearrange it and sell it at a profit than it is to grow the stock. Be confident that the stock is going to be ready when you've sold it, cut it, condition it, and do something else with it. So I do get that. And everybody must make their own choices. Anyway, so that's who I am. Where do I flower farm? Okay, let's go and have a look. I'll show you. So I flower farm here in sunny Somerset, between fashionable Bruton and up-and-coming Wincanton. And it's a glorious February day, really spectacularly good day. We have a slightly untidy and hairy plot, which I'm constantly working on. So if you're local to Wincanton, Bruton, Castle Carey, South East Somerset, then between the beginning of April and the end of September, we have a full garden of flowers for cutting. Yes, so back to the who, what, why, how and where. Part of the how, I think, is how can my customers buy from me? And my retail customers who can order bouquets and wedding flowers and mixed buckets for arranging themselves. I do a huge amount of mixed bucket work. Look, do you remember taking these cuttings in the autumn? Can you see there? Look at those, aren't they exciting? So I'm just potting them on because I'm thinking of it. And I keep going past them and thinking I must just pot them on. Look at that root. That's fantastic, isn't it? So I have a website called Common Farm Flowers, and I encourage my customers to find my website, and then they can order in advance whatever they would like. So for example, over the weekend I had an order for 16 buckets for a wedding in August, and another order for 5 buckets for a wedding at the end of June, beginning of July. So that's the sort of thing. Plus I do, wedding flowers. I do the bride's bouquet and all of that stuff. But that's how people find me, is by looking at my website, because we don't have a shop. And it's great because as a small business, I can basically run my business through my phone, which I'm now talking to make a YouTube clip. So that's very handy. But we really are a very local business. So we're South East Somerset, North Dorset, West Wiltshire. Those are our sort of neighbourhood. Those are the neighbourhoods that we serve. And it's a great relief to have decided that I only am going to have really a product between the 1st of April and the end of September, because it means that between those dates I can give it 100%, and I really hammer it, but I have to make a year's worth of money during that time. So not doing Valentine's Day is an active choice. I don't just think, I can't be bothered. I'm like, okay, if I don't do Valentine's Day, that's several £1,000s turnover that I'm not going to have. But what are the profit margins on Valentine's Day? Is it worth doing if I have lots of extra people in to help and actually suddenly the margins come right down? So I've made a choice that I'm going to really nail April to September. So that's where and when you can order from me. But also I do workshops all year round because I'm good at it. And I really enjoy teaching. And one of the whys of my business is one of the reasons we are flower farmers is because it allows us, it's a way of using an otherwise too small for proper farming, too small for traditional farming piece of land. 7 acres is considered by the government too small to bother with. Doesn't even count as a small holding. But for us, being able to use this piece of land as part wildlife sanctuary, and this pond, the reason I'm here is I'm looking for frogs. The other day I was here and there were 4 in a heap. Just thinking about laying some spawn. And here no, I thought there was spawn, but there isn't yet. But we decided that, hello, if we were flower farmers on a small but sustainable scale, then we could also make a place where the invertebrates would flourish. And if the invertebrates flourish, then all the small animals and small birds flourish. And if the small animals and small birds flourish, larger birds and larger animals will have something to eat, and so on up the food chain. And so was born our snappy business hashtag, which is look after the invertebrates and the rest of the food chain will look after itself. And as many of you will know, that if you're going to have a flourishing community of invertebrates, you need still water, clean still water, which is why we have many small ponds. And near the ponds there are heaps of wood where people can hibernate and overwinter. And the bottom of the ponds are full of silt and planted edges of plants where dragonfly larvae can overwinter and other people can hatch. So there you are. Who am I? I'm a 55-year-old woman who's been growing flowers for pleasure and profit for the last 13 years. It'll be 14 years in April. What do I do? I'm a flower farmer, but I'm also a teacher because I'm good at it, 1, but also 2, because I can't be a flower farmer forever. And if I can encourage other people to grow flowers for pleasure or for profit, then we will all potentially do our part for saving the planet one flower at a time. Why? I'm a flower farmer because we can help save the planet one flower at a time. But also it seems to me to be a good way to earn a living on a modest patch with young kids still at home. I don't want to commute. I don't need a fancy car. I'm not interested in expensive holidays. And so for that reason, it seems a good way to make a living from home. I like working from home. I haven't worked for anyone else since I was 30. I think I'm unemployable. I don't think anyone would give me a job if I wanted. My dream is to write novels, but one thing at a time. How do I do it? I do it organically. I use no pesticides or herbicides, because if you look after the invertebrates, the rest of the food chain will look after itself. I don't have organic certification because it's expensive and time consuming. But we are very conscious of the environment with our growing. So that's how I do it. Where can you buy? You can order from my website, workshops, and flowers between the 1st of April and the end of September. where, I can't remember where I am. Who, what, where, why, and how. Yes, order through the website. There you go. That's who I am, and that's why I do what I do. And for those who say that growing flowers is a privilege, it certainly is. But I would say that if you're running a small business and you're struggling to make ends meet, you need to look at your margins and work harder on what your product is and whether you can scale it enough to make a good living. And that applies to flower farms, jam makers, pie makers, jobbing gardeners. If I had a business ironing for people, I would have to think like that. Anyway, have a lovely day, everybody, and I'll see you soon.